Welcome back. Having listened to one another, we're going to gather ourselves for the Shema and re-encourage each other, all we who struggle with God, all Yisrael, to open our ears, to open our hearts, and to open our understandings. The Shema is on page 22 in your Siduri, in your Machzor. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hashem, Kavod Malchuto, Leolam Abad. We move from listening, from taking in, to the action of crossing through troubles, crossing through what seems to be overwhelming. We turn to page 28. And Eli will lead us in Micha Mocha.
Micha Mocha Bayelim Adonai, Micha Mocha Nedar Bakodesh, Nora Tehilot Osefele, Malhuteha Ra'uvanecha, Hokei Hayam Lifnei Moshe, Zeili Anu Ve'amru, Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Vad, V'nehemar Ki Vada Adonai Yaakov Le'olam Miad Hazak Mimenu, Baruch Atah Adonai Kol Yisrael.
And having crossed through that place, we ask for protection. We turn to page 30, and our choir will lead us in the Hashkivena.
Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu Lishalom, V'chamitenu Malkeinu L'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu Lishalom, V'chamitenu Malkeinu L'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu Lishalom, V'chamitenu Malkeinu Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu Lishalom, V'chamitenu Malkeinu L'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu Lishalom, V'chamitenu Malkeinu L'chaim. Hashkivenu Adonai, Eloheinu Lishalom, V'chamitenu
And to awaken us, to wake up our hearts even in the beginning of the evening, as we have done all through the month of Elul, we turn to page 33 in our Machzor for Tik'u B'Chodesh Shofar. Tik'u B'Chodesh Shofar B'Kesel Yom Chaginu. Ki chok l'Yisrael hu. Mishpat l'Elohei Yaakov. For the Chatzi Kaddish, preceding what will be a silent Amidah this evening, we turn to page 34. And after Phil leads us in the Chatzi Kaddish, we'll have some minutes to daven, to pray silently. You can use the words that are on the page. You can use whatever words are in your heart and your mind tonight. Take some time for private inner communication and be on your feet in body or in spirit for this.
Yitkadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Amen. Be'alma divra chirute ve'hamlich malchute b'chayechon uvyomechon ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ולעולמי עולמיה יתברך. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי תקודשה. ברכו לעילה ולעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה. דמירן, דמירן בעלמא, ויאמרו אמן.
If you are still davening, still praying privately, please continue. If you are ready for Shalom Rav, that is on page 44. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Omecha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata melech adon lechol shalom v'tov beinecha levarech et amecha Yisrael בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. בספר חיים ברכה ושלום, ברכה ושלום ופרנסה טובה, ברכה ושלום, ניזכר וניכתב לפניך. אנחנו וכל עמך בית ישראל לחיים טובים ולשלום. ברוך אתה אדוני עושה השלום.
Hi, everyone. While I get set up, my name is Ellie Sheva, or I go by Ellie, and I'm the rabbinic intern this year at Temple Emanu-El. Just pulling it up on my iPad because these are the times we're in. To begin this Devar, I'd like to share a poem from the scene of the binding of Isaac and focus on the ram's horn, our shofar calling. God has told Abraham to sacrifice his beloved son, and Abraham follows God's instructions. He brings Isaac up a mountain, Mount Moriah, and Abraham binds Isaac to the altar. Just before Abraham strikes and kills his son, an angel tells him that a ram caught in the thicket should be sacrificed instead. This poem is by one of my teachers, Rabbi Sharon Cohen Anisfeld, and it's called On Being Caught in the Thicket. The ram's horn is silent at first, as is the ram, caught in the thicket, waiting for Abraham to lift his head and see. It appears at the last minute, out of nowhere, when it's almost too late. Of course, it was there all along, since twilight on the eve of the first Shabbat, we are told. It was there before darkness fell. We barely knew what darkness was then. It was there all along, waiting for us to open our eyes, waiting for us to see another way. It's not just our stubbornness that blinds us. Sometimes it's the commanding voice of faith. Sometimes it's the commanding voice of despair. And sometimes it's the thicket itself, the thorny, tangled overgrowth of our lives. It's not that we're blind, we're just busy, schlepping the wood, tending the fire, building the altar, trying to quiet the children, trying to answer their questions, even though God knows we can't answer our own. Up until the angel calls out and Abraham looks up until the ram suddenly appears, caught in the thicket. The trajectory of the story, the tragic momentum of the story seems irresistible, irreversible, inevitable. The sacrifice has to be offered. The child will have to die. This is the power of the ram's horn. It beckons us back to this moment in the story. No longer silent, it calls us back to the ram from which it came and asks us, think about the thicket of your own life. What possibilities have you not seen? Think about a story you are telling yourself, whose outcome you think you already know. What alternatives have you not noticed? And then think about the path we are all on together. The altars at the end of the road, the children we love, but seem prepared to sacrifice. Look up, listen. Incline your heart, your ear to the bent, hollow ram's horn, through which human breath becomes a summons and a blast. What might we hear? How might we respond? I love that poem. On the first source sheet I received in my first lesson, or shiur, at Hebrew College 2 years ago, the president of the college, Rabbi Sharon Cohen-Anisfeld, read this poem, which she had written. We were beginning to study and reflect in preparation for the high holidays. As you might guess by the fact that I started with this recollection, this lesson, it stuck with me. And I wanted to use the sources we talked about then. It feels like 2 very long years ago. My question is this: how do we understand a shofar's call? In Judaism, of course, there are many sources, many connections, and many ways to see such an important and central symbol. But in that lesson with Rabbi Cohen-Anisfeld, we discussed one important way to listen to the shofar's call, specifically as the call of a mother grieving, the sound of her cries. In one telling, these are Sarah's cries as she hears about Isaac's ordeal. In Pirkei de Eliezer, in the telling of this midrash, it explains, Samuel, or the troublemaker, was angry that he hadn't been able to fulfill his heart's desire and stop Abraham from fulfilling the test of the Akedah. So what did he do? He went and said to Sarah, "Hey, Sarah, have you heard what's been happening in the world?" She said, "No." He said, "Your old man, your old husband, has taken the young boy Isaac and offered him up as a sacrifice." And the boy was crying and sobbing because he couldn't be saved. Immediately, she began to cry and sob. She cried 3 cries, corresponding to the 3 tekiot of the shofar, 3 sobs corresponding to the 3 short sobbing sounds, and her soul flew away and she died. Abraham, oh gosh, no, don't do this to me. Abraham came back to see her. Abraham came to mourn Sarah and to cry for her, but from where did he come? From Mount Moriah. Interestingly, this connection between a mother grieving her child is not limited to Sarah grieving for loss, or another midrashim, the potential loss of her son. In Talmud, the tractate discussing Rosh Hashanah, describing how we measure the length of a shofar's call, the Gemara compares a teruah call to the cries of the mother of Sisera, an enemy of the Jewish people. He is a Canaanite military commander who was killed in the beginning of Judges, who is a thorn in the Jewish people's side, to say the least. All the same, Sisera's mother waits at her window for news of her son, a soldier and a commander, and sobs as she learns of his death. What do I take from this? There is unity in the experience of grief. In the beautiful book on sorrow and grief in the world, The Wild Edge of Sorrow, Francis Weller writes, "The one emotion that has touched everyone is grief. More than that, as I hear the shofar's call, I'm called to reflect on grief, my own and the grief I may have caused. This year, I am caught in the thicket, specifically in the thicket of grief. In the shofar, I hear a mother weeping, and I think of my own mother who died in July and the tears I've wept for her. This year, I'm caught in the thicket of grief. I'm grieving the deaths of those in our country, the distance I must take, the masks I must wear. I'm grieving for this pandemic and for the horror I see in our nation and our world. In his book, Francis Weller also says, there is something familiar about the rising and falling of loss, how it takes us below the surface of our lives and works on us in some alchemical way. We are remade in times of grief, broken apart and reassembled. It is hard, painful, unbidden work. No one goes in search of loss. Rather, it finds us and reminds us of the temporary gift we have been given, these few sweet breaths called life. We continue to struggle, continue to grieve, continue to lose. I know that I thought perhaps things might be in person this year, like this service. I thought that maybe I could go back to school with wearing a mask, that I could eat inside with my friends, that perhaps I could relax, be a little less vigilant, and feel safe. Instead, I feel my own broken heart, like the broken heart of the world with cracks running through it. I am caught in the thicket. So how can I move on from this? What possibilities have I not seen? Where might I be like Abraham, causing harm but blinded by faith? Where might I be like Sarah, whose own pain and protectiveness of her son and position led her to cast out Hagar? Where might I need to be with my pain to see it? And like Sister's mother, who waits by a window for her son to come home, what am I waiting for right now? The next piyut, which I will lead, is called Achot Kitana, or Little Sister. As a younger sister who was a daughter and granddaughter of younger sisters, I love it dearly. This piyut calls and wails about the curses of the year to beg that they will end, and eventually asks for the blessings of the new year to begin. We can look backward, and then we can look forward. We can honor our grief, remember it, and know that grief comes from our deep love of each other and of the world. Or, as Terry Tempest Williams says, grief dares us to love once more. Whether that is loving life amidst the chaos, loving ourselves amidst our struggle, or loving each other despite loss, I hope we all choose love and choose life again for this new year. For even as the shofar can remind us of loss, it reminds us of hope and revelation, the ram's horn that was sounded at Mount Sinai when we as a community received revelation from God. Joy and light are here in the world with us, if we can dare ourselves to love again. Shana Tova. And now we'll be turning to Achot Ketana, which is in the supplement, and it's on page 10. This is a Moroccan melody I learned, so I think it will be new here. There's no music. Achot Ketana, Tefiloteha, Orcha Be'ona, Tehiloteha, El Narifana, Lemachaloteha, Tikleshana, Ve'kiloteha, Tikleshana, Ve'kiloteha, B'noam milim lecha tikra'eh, V'shir hilulim ki lecha na'eh, Ad matalim eincha v'tireh, Zarim ochlim nachaloteha, Tikleshana v'kiloteha, Tikleshana v'kiloteha, Zimra Shabbat Heshkat Tagbir Lachot Kirva Doda V'Tavir Milev Tavat nafsha v'tasir levakei shavat keluloteha tikleshana v'kiluloteha tikleshana v'kiluloteha Hizku v'gilu kishod gamar letzod hochilu berito shamar lachem v'talu letzion v'amar solu solu Mesiloteha Tahel Shana Uvirchoteha Tahel Shana Uvirchoteha. Let the year and its blessings begin.
We are about to make kiddush together before before we take on communal responsibility. We're going to taste some communal sweetness for this holiday. So the words for kiddush are on page 56. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher bachar banu mikol העם ורוממנו מכל לשון וקידשנו במצוותיו ותיתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה את יום הזיכרון הזה יום תרועה מקרא קודש זכר ליציאת מצרים כי בנו בחרת ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים ודברך אמת וקיים לעד ברוך אתה אדוני מלך על כל הארץ מקדש ישראל ויום הזיכרון ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה. It is my privilege to invite up Amy and Ross Moldoff to open the Ark for Aleinu, which you can find on page 58 in your Machzorim, and please rise in body or in spirit.
אנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונוטה שמיים ויסד הארץ ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל ושכינתו זו וגם נראו הוא אלוהינו אין עוד אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו הכתוב בתורתו ידעת היום מהשבות אל לבבך כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ היום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
At this time of year, I think sometimes more than any other time of year, because so much new is starting, we think of the people in our lives who are not with us physically and can't be ever again, who have died, and whose memories and whose names we honor. So tonight, if you are in mourning, if you are recalling a yahrzeit, or if it's your custom to rise for Kaddish and to say it for those whose families can no longer say it for them, please rise. We're on page 64. And I want to invite you to, if you are on Zoom, go ahead and unmute, and we'll all listen to each other say these words together. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah. Dalma divrach kiruteh v'yamlich
malchuteh v'chaychon v'yimechon v'yeh t'kol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'zuman karib b'muru amen.
Yehei
Shmei Rabbah v'nam omer Yitbarach v'yishavach v'yibar v'yidraman v'yaseh v'tadar v'yidaleh v'yidalal shmei kudshah b'richu Elam minkol v'chatav v'shirata v'shbechata v'nechamata v'yamam v'yamam amen.
Shalom Rabbah
Rabbi Shmei L'chaim Aleinu v'Chol Yisrael
Amen.
Shalom b'brama
Shema Huya Na'aseh Shalom
Ve'al
Yisrael
Kol Yoshevei
Free Teva.
Amen.
Amen.
May their memories be for us a blessing, and may we make blessings from them. Please be seated. Our services tomorrow morning and Wednesday both will start at 9 in the morning with Birchot HaShachar, Psuke de Zimra, and Shachrit services. Tomorrow morning, also at 9, we'll have family services outside, and we'll have a half-hour wake-up yoga flow that Lisa Desberg is going to lead for us. So if you haven't signed up for that yet and you want to, please do, and you'll get the link. Our Torah service tomorrow morning will start at 10:45. Same on Wednesday. And then tomorrow, our Musaf service will start at 12:30. And in the afternoon, we have a pair of Tashlich hikes happening at 4 o'clock, and then a Tashlich service happening at 5. And on Wednesday, in place of traditional Musaf, Phil is going to lead a wonderful discussion for us at 1, not at 12:30, at 1, and that will all be by Zoom. So we hope we will see you back for any and all of these ways of celebrating this new year together. And we are so grateful to everybody whose participation and whose logistics and whose work went into creating these services that we can be together for. We're going to close our services tonight with Yigdal, this traditional hymn for a particular melody for the high holidays. And so that is on page 68 in your Machzor. יגדל אלוהים חי וישתבח, נמצא והנה תל מציאותו, אחד אין יחיד כייחודו, נעלם וגם אין סוף באחדותו, אין לו דמות הגוף ואינו גוף, נערוך אליו קדושתו, קדמה לכל דבר אשר נברא, ראשון ואין ראשית לראשיתו, הינו אדון עולם לכל נוצר, יורה גדולתו ומלכותו, שפע נבואתו נתנו אל אנשי סגולתו ותפארתו, לא קם בישראל כמו שעוד נביא ומביט את אמונתו, תורת אמת נתן לעמו אל על יד נביאו, נאמן ביתו, לא יחליף האל ולא ימיר דתו, לעולמים לזולתו, צופה ויודע, צדרנו מביט לסוף דבר, בקדמתו, גומל לאיש חסד כמפעלו, נותן לרשע רק כרישתו, ישלח לקיץ ימים, משיחנו לפדות מחכה קץ ישועתו, מתים יחייהם ברוב חסדו, ברוך הדעת שתהילתו, מתים יחייהם ברוב חסדו, ברוך הדעת שם תהילתו. To sing us out one last wish from our choir, Lishana Tova Tikatevu.
Lishana Tova Tikatevu, Lishana Tova Tikatevu, Tikatevu, Lishana
L'shana tova umtuka. Let something sweet begin your new year, just as the sweetness of being with each other tonight. See you back at 9 in the morning with Eli Pripas, our rabbinic intern, and Shaliach Tzibor Filplatko, and David, and all of you. L'shana tova. This concludes our service.
Shana Tova.
Shana tova. Shana tova.